broadcast. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Bach, and I represent the 11th Judicial Circuit on the Florida Bar Young Lawyers Division Board of Governors. Welcome to our webinar today, Beyond Balance, Strategies for Professional and Personal Well-Being. I want to tell you a little bit about what the YLD does before we move on to our program. We advocate, educate, and serve all young lawyers in Florida. As an example, we produce all of the basic CLEs that young lawyers are required to take in their first 3 years of practice, including practicing with professionalism. And we also recently launched the Legal Accelerator website. This is a one-stop hub for young lawyers to get answers to many common questions they will encounter as they transition to the practice of law. Similar to Google, it's easily searchable and organized in a user-friendly manner, allowing young lawyers to efficiently find answers to common questions. It's only a small fraction of what we do. I would encourage you to visit our website, flayld.org, for more information. So now to introduce our speakers for today. Welcome Dr. Teresa Albizu. She is the founder and co-president of the RA Pinnacle Group. Formerly, Dr. Albizu served as a higher education leader for over 20 years, held a faculty appointment teaching courses in marriage and family therapy, and maintained a private mental health practice focusing on relationship issues. She is an alumna of the National Hispana Leadership Institute, the Harvard Kennedy School of Government's Executive Education Program, and the Center for Creative Leadership's Leadership Development Program. She has her Doctor of Education in Higher Education Leadership from Nova Southeastern University. She obtained her master's degree in Marriage and Family Therapy from Albizu University and her Bachelor of Science from Florida State University. Our second speaker today is Dr. Gerardo Rodriguez Menendez, who is the co-president of the RA Pinnacle Group. He currently serves as founding chair of the postdoctoral Masters in Clinical Psychopharmacology at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Dr. Rodriguez is board certified by the American Board of Professional Psychology. He formerly served as Dean of the College of Psychology at John F. Kennedy University, as Chancellor of Albizu University's Miami campus, and as Interim Dean of Fielding Graduate University in Santa Barbara, California. Dr. Rodriguez formerly maintained a private mental health practice providing a variety of psychological services. So take comfort that our presenters are very well trained today. There will be polling questions throughout the program, so please be on the lookout for those. They'll come through on your computer. And we are also going to leave time at the end of the program for questions and answers, so please try to hold those until the end. And now I want to pass the microphone over to our two speakers today.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for that kind introduction. We're certainly very happy to be here today to share with you what we believe is valuable information about the importance of well-being to enjoy a fulfilling personal and professional life. And Jerry and I first became interested in this topic when we launched a private practice and consulting firm in 2008. And back then, we served clients from a variety of professional fields characterized by high-stress environments, law being one of them. So during our conversations with clients, it became clear to us that law programs do a great job at teaching lawyers about the law and how to develop practice skills. However, it is evident that lawyers receive little or no training on managing themselves and other legal professionals. So the real issue, as we saw it, was a gap in leadership and management training, including a lack of understanding of how personal development prepares us to better manage the professional challenges that impact our optimal performance and life satisfaction. We should mention that some of the topics we will address today merit a more in-depth coverage. However, our intent is to familiarize you with these topics in the hope that you and your respective firms will make a space and time to learn and explore these further. So we all recognize that in the practice of law, stress comes with the territory, and for many different reasons. However, we know that the strategies lawyers are using to manage stress are not proving highly effective. So the questions that we will address through our presentation are, does happiness as a lawyer make any difference in the practice of law? What lifestyle practices have been found to contribute to longevity? Why is it important for the legal profession to embrace research on employee happiness, well-being, and occupational engagement? Now, there are some very compelling answers to these questions, and it would seem prudent that as a profession, law practitioners should benefit from the extensive research that has been done in the fields of leadership, psychology, neuroscience, and organizational behavior.
We'll be covering the following topics in today's presentation. First, mental health concerns among U.S. attorneys. Second, effective stress management strategies for home and the office. Third, personal wellness and its impact on leadership and ethical practice. Fourth, how to disengage from work and enjoy family and life. Then redefining true success, and we'll conclude with a question and answer period.
So let us begin by reviewing recent research on the topic of lawyer well-being. The National Task Force on Lawyer Well-being was initiated by the ABA in collaboration with other entities within and outside of the ABA in 2016. Now, the main conclusion is that to be a good lawyer, one has to be a healthy lawyer, and that therefore it would be important to recognize that the profession is falling short. Now, as you can see from this slide, the law profession is struggling with issues of stress, depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. And by the way, we should mention that similar findings have been identified in other high-stress professions such as medicine, although incidence levels appear to be more prominent among members of the law profession. But what we found particularly alarming and highly relevant to the Young Lawyers Division is that the highest rates of problem drinking and depression were found among practitioners in the first 10 years of practice and those working in private firms. The task force also identified higher rates of social alienation and sleep deprivation, probably related to the issue of billable hours, higher rates of overall dissatisfaction with the profession and with life were also identified, which are further impacted by high rates of incivility, likely attributable to the adversarial styles of communication that lawyers have been taught and are encouraged to use.
Other findings on lawyer well-being include, as compared to 28 occupations studied, lawyers were 3.6 times more likely to suffer from depression than any other occupation. 36% of lawyers qualify as problem drinkers, according to one study, as opposed to 15% of physicians. Depression among law students is alarming. 8 to 9% prior to matriculation, which is what you would expect to find in the general population. 27% after one semester of law, 34% after 2 semesters, and 40% after 3 years of study. The conclusion of Krill, Johnson, and Albert in the Journal of Addiction Medicine, and this is the study cited by the National Task Force, is that attorneys experience problematic drinking that is hazardous, harmful, or otherwise generally consistent with alcohol use disorders at a much higher rate than other populations. Depression, anxiety, and stress are also significant problems for this population and most notably associated with the same personal and professional characteristics. This is the conclusion on page 52. So then, what constitutes substance abuse? And we thought that it would be important for you to be able to identify the signs of substance abuse, given that this seems to be a problem in the practice of law. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, substance abuse is met when there is a maladaptive pattern of substance use leading to clinically significant impairment or distress as manifested by one or more of the following within a given year. First, recurrent substance use resulting in a failure to fulfill major role obligations at work, school, or home. Second, recurrent substance use in situations in which it is physically hazardous, such as driving a car or operating machinery. Third, recurrent substance use related to legal problems, arrest for disruptive behavior. or DUI. Fourth, continued substance use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems caused or exacerbated by the effects of the substance. Additionally, depression is very common in our society. And more than likely, you have met people who were depressed but might not have stated outwardly that they were feeling despondent. However, think SIGI caps. Depression has many different manifestations depending upon age, but for adults, generally speaking, SIGI caps means for a minimum of 2 weeks, there's been depressed mood for most of the day with 4 of the following signs. S stands for suicidal ideations, I, lack of interest, G, excessive guilt, E, lack of energy, C, concentration difficulties, A, decreased appetite, P, physical agitation or lethargy, and then S stands for sleep difficulties, hence the term SIGI caps.
All right, then Dr. Martin Seligman, who is very well known for his research on positive psychology and optimism, found that happy people outperform their peers on almost every measure of job success in every profession and job category, with one exception: lawyers. Now, Seligman proposes that the reason for this is that the law profession tends to reward professionals who display a tendency for depression. Now, we call this the law paradox because the legal profession is the exception to the rule. Perhaps this is related to a traditional resistance of the profession to acknowledge mental health and wellness concerns. And just as Jerry mentioned, by the time law students are completing their program, up to 40% can be experiencing symptoms of depression. Now, on the other hand, Daniel Bowling, who also has conducted extensive research on the condition of the law profession, proposes that the reason why many lawyers appear to be unhappy is that they find themselves so busy and stretched by the demands of the profession that they forget to stop and smell the roses and reflect as to why they became lawyers in the first place. So remembering why you chose to study law is an important influence on life satisfaction. Now, let's take a moment to answer this poll question, and Lara is going to facilitate your ability to answer. And the question is, why did you decide to study law? Was it to help others, embrace intellectual challenges, advance and protect society, advance a cause that is of personal importance, prestige and financial gain, or is there any other reason, and please specify that reason? And we'll just give you a few seconds to enter your response. And Larry, if you would let us know what the results show.
Will do. The question has been sent out, and hopefully you've all received them. I see the responses are coming in, so I will.
Perfect.
The results.
Okay.
So it looks like we have. Oh, I'll give you a few more minutes. They're still coming in.
Okay.
So it looks like about 47% of the respondents chose A, help others. 49% chose B, embrace intellectual challenges. 16% chose C, advance and or protect society. 8% said D, advance a cause that is of personal importance. 28% said E, prestige and financial gain. And 4% said other.
Okay, well, some research indicates that the reason that individuals become lawyers, one, the ability and opportunity to help others, as mentioned. 2, prestige. 3, transferable skills. The law profession provides you with the skills that can be applied to so many different professions. 4, earning potential. 5, the intellectual challenge. 6, flexibility. 7, diverse practice areas of specialty. 8, work environment. 9, global influence. And 10, the ability to continually improve at what one does.
So the task force on lawyer, let me pause here for a minute and say that then any of the responses you provided are correct, because you typically choose to enter into the law profession not for just one reason, but for more than one reason. And we had a total of over 100% because sometimes some people enter more than one response, okay? So the task force on lawyer well-being identified 3 compelling reasons for taking action. First, lawyer well-being contributes to organizational success, and that is regardless of the setting where the law professionals work. So it could be in law firms, private business or corporations, nonprofit, or government. Now, if cognitive functioning is impaired by the conditions previously discussed, legal professionals will be unable to perform at their highest levels of competence. So in other words, lawyer well-being is good for business. Secondly, lawyer well-being is imperative for competent practice necessary to ensure the protection of clients as well as avoiding disciplinary actions. And as you can see on this slide, research suggests that between 40 to 70% of disciplinary proceedings and malpractice claims involve substance use, depression, or both. So it would be important to remember that the practice of law is expected to exceed minimum levels of competence, and in fact, the ABA's Model Rules of Professional Conduct calls for lawyers, and I quote, to strive to attain the highest level of skill to improve the law and the legal profession, and to exemplify the legal profession's ideals of public service, end of quote. So, of course, this would be deterred if a lawyer's memory, attention, and problem-solving capacities are impaired due to mental health concerns, including the abuse of alcohol. Now, lastly, but certainly not least, from a humanitarian perspective, promoting and facilitating activities for lawyer well-being is the right thing to do. We must recognize that untreated mental health and substance use disorders can ruin the lives of individuals, their careers, and impact their families in deleterious ways that are sometimes difficult to rectify. So taking action proactively to prevent falling prey to these issues and challenges certainly requires our own personal and collective commitment.
Now, we want to alert you as we're talking about wellness that there are 3 common happiness traps that are particularly specific to attorneys. The first is ambition, and ambition by itself is a good thing. But ambition coupled with hyper-competition and an attitude of win at all costs can damage relationships, collaborative relationships, and impact your work performance and satisfaction with life. Second, living by others' expectations. We call this the should trap. We live by expectations, what we should or ought to do. And so then we're not living by what we wish to do. And so there's always that belief that attorneys should be strong at all times, and no one can be strong at all times. Third, working too hard. Long hours create higher levels of stress and decreases your emotional intelligence, your ability to regulate that stress and work with others meaningfully. Therefore, wellness does matter. So, we define wellness as the quality or state of being healthy in body and mind, especially as the result of deliberate effort. And we want to emphasize deliberate effort. It just doesn't happen serendipitously. Social science research emphasizes that health is not defined by the absence of illness or dysfunction, nor is it limited to feeling happy. And in the traditional model, the medical model of mental health, we have a biopsychosocial model. And this is true. We're all partly influenced by our biology, by our psychological makeup, and by our social relationships. At the same time, for contemporary times, we think that we need a newer, more updated model.
So let's review and offer some basic recommendations about the wellness dimensions. The World Health Organization defines mental health as, and I quote, a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community, close quote. So well-being, in this sense, is considered a multidimensional approach that goes beyond feeling happy. And while the National Task Force espouses six-dimensional model, we espouse 8, because we believe that the financial and environmental dimensions of well-being are important enough to merit their own space and attention. And if I would like you to take a moment to visualize yourself in the center of this wheel, sort of like you put yourself, stand up, put yourself in the center, and see all these dimensions of wellness, these 8 spheres of wellness revolving around you, up and down, back and forth, horizontally. And that is what holds you up and gives you strength and gives you the resilience that you need in order to enjoy a productive and happy life. So when we look at the dimensions of wellness, let's start with intellectual wellness. In addition to staying abreast of the new knowledge and information in your field, which we all do as responsible professionals, we have to take time to also learn about topics of special interest to you, like personal development, right? So one of the things that we recommend is set a book of personal interest in your nightstand, and every night when you get ready to go to bed, just read a few pages, because what you read right before you, or what you're exposed to right before you go to sleep, actually remains in your brain as you sleep. In terms of social wellness, we human beings are social creatures. We are social not just in the trivial sense that we like company, and not just in the obvious sense that we each depend on others. We human beings are social by nature. So we not only crave interactions, but we seek and require them. And remember that this is one of the findings of the task force, that lawyers tend to experience social isolation. So at work, instead of sending a stream of emails to your colleague who is 2 doors down the hall, consider getting up and meeting face-to-face to discuss topics that don't require more than a yes or no answer, right? Or that require more than a yes or no answer, I should say. Because I'm sure you can think of many other ways in which to increase social wellness in and outside of work, but you need to give this a bit of thought. In terms of emotional wellness, it is imperative that we all learn how to practice self-awareness to recognize why we are feeling in a certain way and where those feelings are coming from, which in turn influence our self-regulation, right? That is expressed by how we behave towards others and ourselves. Now, this is a highly important skill because it has significant implications for life satisfaction. And I guarantee that it makes a huge difference on how you perceive situations and life in general. Okay, so we'll skip the next one and jump, for sake of time, to spiritual wellness. We can only live a fulfilling life when we live by our core values. And I ask, how many of you have taken the time to identify and write down your personal core values? And are you clear on what your workplace values are? When our core values clash or are challenged, it results in a great deal of emotional turmoil that can have serious implications to our health. So being clear on the values that guide how we think, how we behave, how we make emotions is very important. Now, physical wellness goes beyond losing a few pounds and eating healthy. Achieving physical wellness relies on our ability to fully integrate overall health, including body and mind. And we also want to go over financial wellness because you all have heard it before. Financial-related stressor is a #1 relationship buster. So having a budget, knowing what comes in, what goes out, how much we're saving, how we will be able to plan for vacations, buying a house, pay for the student loans, and all that other good stuff, provides a deep sense of security. And security brings us strength and peace of mind. So here's another question for you. Of the factors included below, which one has the highest influence on health status? Is it human biology, environment, healthcare, or lifestyle choices? And we'll give you a minute to respond.
It looks like almost everyone is in agreement on the answer here. Most people, over 90%, chose D, lifestyle choices. We have, starting from the beginning, 1% chose A, human biology, 8% chose B, environment, 3% chose 3, healthcare, and again, over 90% chose D, lifestyle choices.
Great.
Well, if you selected D, lifestyle choices, you are correct. And in fact, the CDC published the top 10 causes of mortality in 2015. And what becomes very obvious, heart disease, cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, stroke, diabetes, these conditions typically do not occur in isolation. It's not that you're born with it, it's that most individuals have a lifestyle that have led to many of these particular conditions. And in fact, the American Psychological Association notes that among these factors, lifestyle accounts for 51% of our health status. Human biology is only 20% and the environment 19%. But lifestyle being 51, and look at the behaviors, smoking, obesity, stress, nutrition, blood pressure, alcohol, and other drugs. Alcohol is a drug and should always be considered as a drug. Now, in terms of the physiology of the stress response, why do we become stressed? A Chinese proverb states, that the birds of worry and care fly above your head, this you cannot change. But that they build nests in your hair, this you can prevent. Hans Sale, who is well known for his studies on stress in the 1950s, said, it's not stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it.
So we should talk here about the elements of psychological stress. So stress is provoked by a stimulus, right? We receive a stimulus that is translated into a thought that then creates an emotion that impacts how we behave with self and others and then produces an outcome or response. So it's a very simple concept, but it's important also and very related to the issue of emotional intelligence, of self-awareness and self-regulation. Stimulus turns into a thought that creates an emotion that influences how we behave to then produce an outcome. So knowing the difference between good and bad stress is very important so that we can properly identify how to manage it. Like the reaction of this kitty who is probably hissing at something or someone that the cat interprets as a real danger and finds no other way to deal with it but to engage in a stress reaction. On the other hand, our stress reactions can result from real threats. In this case, as you can see, this little dog is engaging in adaptive stress measures in the face of something that he cannot control. So the goal of stress management is not to eliminate all stress, but rather to adapt the mind and body to appropriate levels of stress. Now, with too little stress, we tend to underachieve in life. But with too much stress, we lapse into distress and the potential for a breakdown of some kind. Now, this is an area where lawyers tend to get into trouble because lawyers tend to normalize high levels of stress. We do not believe that the passive endurance of chronic stress is a sign of courage or character, because chronic stress is so harmful to your overall health that simply enduring it is generally a sign of bad judgment. We do believe that overcoming life's challenges, whether personal or professional, is what takes real guts and creativity. So in short, we are glad that the work culture of the law profession is beginning to shift, and that the times when the requirement was that you had to take the heat in the kitchen or get out is evolving in the right direction. And this is a process, a real paradigm shift that takes time. But the important thing is that it is moving forward. So in stress management, our responsibility is to learn how to interrupt the automatic flow of the stress stimulus and also learn to change how we appraise that stressor. So a quick example of interrupting the flow of stress is by recognizing when we're experiencing emotions that drive us to dysfunctional thinking, right? And we end up feeling fearful or guilty or very angry, and then replacing that dysfunctional thinking with realistic alternatives that allow us to align our behaviors with our values. Now, one common example would be rumination, right? Rumination, overthinking, or thinking the worst of a situation, all of which impact our well-being.
Now, decades of stress research indicate that stress is really a complex phenomenon. And it helps to just have a little bit of understanding about the neurophysiology of stress, although we're not going to get really into a lot of detail here, but this is just a very simple overview. So the neural components of emotional responses to stress consist of three elements: behavior, or overt observable actions, endocrine, or hormonal regulation, and then the autonomic nervous system, which is part of the peripheral nervous system, is involved in our stress response in terms of its regulation of the particularly sympathetic nervous system. Now, behaviorally, there are basically three responses: fight, flight, or freeze. In contrast, when we're talking about the hormonal regulation of stress, we're looking at an axis called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And this is a feedback loop that occurs in our body to stressful stimuli. And it begins with the hypothalamus in the brain, and so then the hypothalamus will secrete releasing factors, which will then act upon the pituitary, and in this case, the pituitary is releasing ACTH, or adrenal-corticotropic hormone. That will then stimulate the adrenal glands that sit right on top of the kidneys to be releasing norepinephrine, epinephrine, or adrenaline, and cortisol, among other compounds. The autonomic nervous system is also involved and provides background regulation to these hormonal responses. And so then when we're thinking of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system is generally associated with energy conservation, whereas the sympathetic nervous system is what gets you ready for that fight or flight response. The key takeaway point here is that these are adaptive responses to stress that have evolved over millennia. They help us in the short term. But in the long term, if we have a prolonged stress reaction that becomes chronic in nature, what will happen then is that it will increase our blood pressure, it will cause deterioration of blood vessels, it can impact our immunological functioning, and it can even cause cognitive deficits such as memory deficits.
So I really hope that you all are taking notes because Jerry's going to want to quiz you on this at the end, so good luck. Anyways, let's try to simplify this thing of stress management. So E plus R equals O, event plus response equals outcome, means that for every event we experience, we engage in a response that influences or determines the outcome. So in as much as we're able to influence or control our response to the event, then it is within our power to also influence or control the outcome. And I hope that makes sense to you. Because this is where our emotional intelligence and emotional wellness serves as well. When presented with a stressful event and we practice self-awareness, then we can use our self-regulation skills to achieve the best outcome possible. And I say best because there are some things that we in fact cannot control. However, when you practice this technique, you will find that there are many things that indeed you can influence to achieve your desired outcome, like in preventing arguments, in de-escalating conflict, offering alternative solutions, and so on and so forth. So in this way, everything that you think, you say, and do needs to become intentional and aligned with your purpose, your values, and your goals. So in addition to practicing self-awareness and self-regulation and remembering to put into motion the formula we just discussed, there are a variety of evidence-based and research-based strategies that have been shown effective in managing stress.
So, number one, identify the sources of your stress. If you can identify the source, you can then probably identify the triggers to your stress. Number two, practice relaxation techniques. And I'm not referring to relaxation as coming home from a hard day, putting up your feet on, an ottoman, opening up a beer and watching TV. That's mental vegetation. It is really not relaxation. We're talking about allowing the body to engage in physiological relaxation and lowering brainwave patterns in the brain. So sleep is also essential, getting 7 hours of sleep, because sleep has restorative properties in the brain. Meditation, and I'll mention a little bit more about meditation, has been found to be particularly effective. It is a form of intentional mindfulness. Emotional intelligence, having that self-awareness, being able to regulate ourselves and not allowing other individuals to control our responses, is a key skill to learn. Taking a break from the stressor or putting an obstacle between you and the stressor to give you a little more space. Exercise is of key importance as well. Remember that you've got this hormonal regulation going through your body. You also have the sympathetic nervous system that gets keyed up. So consequently, your exercise helps to dissipate some of this energy that we have in our bodies. Then connecting with others. As Teresa mentioned, we're social animals, social human beings, so we need to engage in meaningful relationships. Managing time. There are 168 hours in a week, so you need to learn to manage your time the same way that you manage your budget. Cultivate your dimensions of wellness. If you want to live longer, give serious reflection to your self-care. And then, when necessary, seek help. This can be done informally with a colleague or staff member, but for more serious issues, consider coaching or particularly therapy as well. When something is really bothering you to the point of becoming moderate to severe in terms of intensity, therapy produces better outcomes. But for many individuals, coaching works particularly with mild to moderate conditions.
And you know what, Jerry, I want to also add that there are some basic concepts and self-help techniques that we have discussed here at the most elemental levels, but I ask you not to be fooled by the fact that some of the advice shared sounds like common sense, because there is plenty of evidence that the problem with common sense is that common sense is not so commonly practiced at all. So we underestimate the value of certain strategies and practice because we say to ourselves, well, I know that. Or perhaps we believe that some of these strategies are simple at face value and that they will not be helpful. But we cannot emphasize enough that in many instances, the simplest and most fundamental strategies are the most effective. So please do yourself a favor and do not confuse simplicity with lack of sophistication, because simplification tends to make things more clear, more memorable, less overwhelming, and easier to put into practice. So here is another poll question. Research supports that the most effective stress management methods for physical and brain health are 1, exercise and diet, 2, relaxation techniques and sleep, 3, taking a break from the stressors, 4, exercise and meditation, or 5, connecting with others. And we'll give you a few seconds to enter your response.
And Lara, anytime you're ready, tell us what the survey says.
Survey says the results are still flowing in, so let me give people a few more seconds.
Sure.
So this one is pretty evenly split. It looks like we have about 35% that chose exercise and diet, 40% chose relaxation techniques and sleep, 15% chose taking a break from the stressors, 34% chose exercise and meditation, and 21% chose connecting with others. And again, this is obviously over 100%, so people may have chosen multiple answers.
Sure.
Okay. Well, exercise is certainly of key importance. And in fact, it's been generally found that you need about 35 minutes of exercise 4 times a week. And what you really want to do is to get your heart rate up, and you want to break sweat. That's the most important thing in terms of doing exercise. Low-impact exercises tend to be a little bit better. Probably the best overall exercise is swimming, because you're exercising your core at the same time, but walking will certainly suffice as well. Secondly, meditation. Believe it or not, since the 1960s, there have been over 1,000 articles published in research journals on meditation. And meditation has many neuroprotective factors that are associated with it. And we don't have time to go into it today, but there are numerous studies at this point citing the importance of meditation for overall brain health. Just as an example, when we're talking about these neuroprotective factors, I'll mention that over the last 20 years, there's been a virtual explosion in neuroscience research, and these neuroprotective factors are one of the key findings, along with neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to change in response to the environment. Elizabeth Blackburn is the 2009 Nobel Prize recipient for physiology or medicine, and her molecular biological research on telomeres. Telomeres are the caps that that are located at the end of our chromosomes. The thicker the telomere, the greater the chance of cellular division, hence life. So Blackburn has noted the importance in her studies of mindful attention and meditation. And in fact, Jacobs led a study at UCLA. Blackburn was a member of this study. It was published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology, and that telomerase activity, the enzyme that causes these telomeres to thicken, is a predictor of long-term cellular viability. It decreases with chronic psychological distress, and after 3 months of a meditative retreat, it was found to actually have a positive association with change in telomerase activity. Therefore, The Om in meditation may extend down to the chromosome.
Now, let's talk for a few minutes about disengaging from work to enjoy life. And this is very important for anyone who has a very demanding profession. So this is a little counterintuitive, this first recommendation, because we're working so much that at the end of the day, we don't want to stop to do a list. But making a list at the end of the day to just write down the 3 or 4 top accomplishments of the day allows you to reflect on what you got done and gives you a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. And then you follow that by identifying 3 to 4 priorities for the next day, because the idea is that when you leave your office, you know what you did so well, you should really celebrate your accomplishments, and then you're ready the next morning, and you don't take all that home saying, oh my God, what do I have to do the next day? I have so many things, let me go home and continue working. So unless it's necessary for some reason, right, the idea is to be able to do this exercise and then close your office and go home. You should shut down all social media, and I know this is very hard to do, but really there is so much research about the addictive now powers of online mediums that we should really be careful in this process. So take 5 minutes to say a gratitude reflection. Saying thanks, whether it's a religious prayer or just an overall gratitude statement, does incredible things to make you feel good and put things into perspective. This time when we are grateful for the things that we really value, like going home and being with our loved ones. Listen to an audio book on your way to home, relaxing music or joyful music, sing in the car, whatever it takes, right, to start relaxing, to enjoy, and anticipate sharing time with your spouse, partner, and family and friends.
And what we really want to emphasize, and the takeaway point, is that disengagement is a process. It doesn't happen automatically. So when you leave work, you have to mindfully disengage from the day. Too many people walk through the door, they're traveling home, they're still thinking about work, even when they cross the threshold of their home. So make a loving connection upon arriving home with your partner or spouse. You've got to be in that mindset to do this. Release some of the stress by exercising if you can, or doing that before going to work. Use the home environment to slow down wherever possible. Dim lights, put on some candles, relaxing music to create that atmosphere to put you in a good mindset. Practice this transition deliberately and with intention.
All right, we wanted to mention really quickly some facts about communication. This is beyond the scope of this presentation. However, because communication skills is such an important skill for our personal and professional success, we want you to bring some awareness to the fact that most people talk at the rate of 125 to 150 words per minute, but we think at the rate of 500 to 60 words per minute, meaning we are thinking about what we're going to say, and we're processing the information that we're hearing much faster than we are listening. 75% of the time we're distracted or forgetful. On the average, we only remember about 20% of what we hear, and less than 2% of the population has had formal education in listening skills. This is very important for professional success, listening skills. Now, there's a difference between listening and hearing, right? We know that hearing is basically a physical process that is very passive, as opposed to listening, which is very active. It's a physical and mental process, and it is a skill that we need to work on and develop.
Now, what makes people happy? And this is from the research of David Myers. Physical health and fitness, reasonable goals and expectations, positive self-esteem and optimism or hope, feelings of confidence and control. So having a sense of perceived control is as important as having control. Challenging work balanced by leisure, meaningful relationships and intimacy, contributing to a community, giving to something that is greater than oneself, giving back, and good relationships in terms of marriage and family. And you'll see that these elements actually correlate very nicely with the 8 dimensions of wellness. Traits of happy lawyers include having a clear set of goals, developing plans to fulfill the goals, and then breaking this up into achievable steps. Building some fun into your plans so that you can have greater satisfaction, following through or persistence, and then accepting one's own fallibility. We are going to fail at a given point in time, so this isn't crushing in nature. It's just part of life. Seeking feedback and making adjustments, and having a feeling of competency. I'm going to pass by the next slide, Teresa, in terms of time.
Okay.
So let's move to redefining true success.
Yes, very important that we redefine what true success means to us, what it means to you personally. And always remember that unless you're happy, you can't really call yourself successful. So beware of equating success only or mostly with financial achievement. We need money in life. It creates and facilitates many things, but we cannot just measure success based on our compensation or our income. True success really includes providing excellent client service in an ethical and professional manner. That is an incredible source of pride and the reason I am sure why so many of you actually chose the profession of law. Being physically and mentally healthy, performing at your peak and working on those dimensions of wellness to be able to perform at your peak, enjoying meaningful personal and professional relationships because, again, we are social in nature, and possessing strong feelings of meaning and purpose. So here is our recommendation. Write a one-page essay. We sometimes don't take the time to work on us, So you have to make a little room for you. Write a one-page essay, a personal vision or mission statement. Do it single-spaced and typed. And answer the question, my definition of success. Who am I? What do I want? And when you take the time to do that, you will be amazed as to how many things come to you that you did not realize were so important. And it will work both ways, right? It will help you realize that you are accomplishing many of them, which creates a sense of accomplishment, or that you really need to work on some areas to feel very purposeful, okay? And make sure to read it often. So where do we go from here after having gone over all these statistics of the National Task Force reports and these recommendations and information on health and wellness? Well, it is recommended that you establish a wellness committee in your workplace, because it is through that committee that you'll be able to assess the overall state of lawyer well-being within your group. And then implement a high-quality wellness program based on organizational and group priorities. What is it that your group needs most to succeed, also considering some individual needs? Emphasize resilience-related training, communication skills, conflict resolution skills, relationship skills, and monitor signs of poor self-care and burnout, some of which Jerry covered earlier by giving you some information on signs of depression and substance use. And then make sure that you start talking the talk of destigmatizing help-seeking behaviors. When we need help, and it is our duty to help oneself and help those around us. So facilitate opportunities for socialization, foster collegiality and respectful engagement. Again, emphasize effective communication skills, very important, and again, foster your dimensions of wellness. So we are very thankful to have had this time together today, and we certainly enjoy doing these seminars. We also do workshops and programs and retreats in a variety of topics. And then we recognize the importance of leadership development skills and executive coaching, which we do individually and in group settings, depending on the needs of a group and an individual. And, of course, relationship coaching, because we know that our relationships, this is a relationship-driven world, and it is the quality of our relationships that gives us our highest satisfaction in life. So we leave you with this thought. Things do not change. We do. And I think that this is important to keep in mind, because when you start making changes in the way that you speak, that you relate, that you work. Amazing things start to happen with those around you. You start seeing even the most subtle changes sometimes produce some amazing results. So work on changing where you believe will make the most impact in your life. So now we want to take some questions. If you would like to enter a question, because Lara, I'm not seeing right at this moment any questions in the question box.
Yep, you should be able to ask a question. In the meantime, while you're thinking, there may not be any, but while you're thinking, I do want to share the CLE code with everybody before the presentation ends. The CLE code is 3058. This will be emailed to everyone at the end, but if you didn't catch it, the CLE code one more time is 3058. And we'll give some time for people to ask some questions, but I wanted to say I love the idea of a list. I'm a list person, and I always list what I have to still do, but the idea of listing what I have accomplished, I think is going to be very, very beneficial to my mental health and my stress levels.
Of course. Wonderful. Yes. We sometimes underestimate the value and the impact of some simple actions that really allow us to really focus ourselves on our wellness and our happiness.
So we do have a question here, and I'll read it out loud, and then you guys can answer. What role do you think medical marijuana can play in personal wellness?
Well, I really think that the jury is still out in terms of the use of cannabis. I do think that medical professionals are looking at how cannabis can be helpful in a variety of conditions. However, in terms of mental health per se, I am not aware of any research showing that cannabis produces decreased levels of anxiety or decreased stress levels that are sustained over a period of time. So again, cannabis is a substance, and it is a substance that is prone to abuse, and so then with anything, moderation. But medical marijuana in particular, there we still, I think it's too...
The jury's still out.
Yeah, it's too soon to know.
Yeah.
And another question is, how often do you recommend that we meditate per week?
Well, it's best done ideally twice a day for 10 to 15 minutes, but once a day is also very effective. So part of the thing with meditation is that you really want to lower your brain waves. We're constantly thinking, and, we're even thinking about our thoughts. So, we're so prone, and people who are highly intelligent are particularly prone to ruminate. So what you want to do is to lower the number of thoughts that you are having. You'll always have thoughts, but when you have one, think of it kind of like as a cloud passing by. You accept it, but then you try to get recentered again. So with meditation, there's a classic saying, mind like water. If you see a placid pool of water, you'll see your reflection. But if you take a pebble and you drop it into that body of water, you're going to get a ripple effect. Well, thoughts in the brain are kind of like the same thing. So the more thoughts you're having, the more ripple effect and the lowered perception you have of what is around you. So you want to also decrease those brainwave patterns going from a beta level where one is constantly thinking to a more alpha level state that is a pre-conscious state.
We do have a few other questions. I'm not sure if the program will cut us off in 1 minute, so I will try to add this last one in if we have the time. But there's a question as to whether you have any good meditation resources to get started, as some courses can be quite expensive.
Sure. Yeah. And in fact, I have a particular preference for Zen meditation because there is no chanting in Zen meditation. So it is done silently. It can be done anywhere. Before an important meeting, that you have, particularly about your future, take a few minutes just to meditate, get into a proper mindset before you go into that particular meeting. But there are a set of steps for meditation. And essentially, you're talking about concentration, breathing, and posture.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining today. I want to thank, importantly, Dr. Albizu and Dr. Rodriguez-Menendez for joining us today and providing this insight. Again, an email will be sent with the CLE course code, and if we didn't get to your question, I will send them to both of the doctors so that they can possibly answer after the webinar. Again,
Absolutely.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a super great day.
You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.